Okay, hi guys. So this is the third video going into strange bodies, and seeing what Sarah Gleason White has to say, what other people have to say, and kind of just breaking it down. So right here, this is like the very beginning, still kind of the intro. This first line right here, she says, "The female adolescent is even more grotesque than her adult counterpart. Not only is she female, but she is in that liminal state between childhood and adulthood. And in the case of Mick and Frankie, between feminine and masculinity." I do agree with this. I think that this is very true. They are, like I said, kind of between childhood and adulthood. Frankie is not entirely a teenager yet. Mick is, but that doesn't really even mean much. She's still not an adult. Even just all of your teenage years are kind of that weird gray area. Like I'm not a kid, but I'm not an adult. And then, like she says, between feminine and masculinity, I think that's really important. I think it's really accurate. Masculinity, it might be I don't want to call it a stretch because it's not a stretch. It's kind of, I think, a strong term to use. I wouldn't call them masculine. I wouldn't call Frankie and Mick masculine, but I get that they're not very feminine. I do see how in this instance, during this time period, during where they lived, if you're being in between femininity and masculinity, I get why people would call that grotesque. Like I said, I don't really think I don't agree with that. I do see why people would say it in their situation. Not that it's right, but that is where it stems from. I think, as we know, in the past in general, let alone in the South, it's kind of like you're either a girl or you're a boy, and it's like there's no in between, and obviously they are not like that. So I think that is where those problems arise, and I think that sentence is worded very well. And then just a little bit under in the first part, under Freakish Adolescence. The first sentence, Mick Kelly's and Frankie Adams' socially perceived freakishness arises from their boyishness, at a moment in their lives when they should ideally be entering womanhood. Which, going off of that, I think it's like a similar sentence, but I also think it's important. Kind of when you are at this coming of age stage, when you're entering womanhood, that's kind of when boys and girls, you're kind of going through puberty, you're growing up. Girls are, they're starting to get their periods, and they're at that age, and they're growing up, and their bodies are changing, they're looking different, and most people, most girls, maybe you'd start wearing makeup, and they're clearly not like that, and they clearly are different, not in a bad way, but they're entering womanhood, and they aren't very feminine. So I do think that's why they have this socially perceived freakishness, and that is where that comes from. And then going off of this, the next sentence says, however, the young girls are freakish not only because of their tomboyishness, but also paradoxically because of their emerging femininity and sexuality, which is, again, the same kind of saying the same thing, but also true. And this part adds in the sexuality, which I think is really important. I don't want to call it weird. I do think it is a little bizarre, I guess, to use that word again. Even though they're coming of womanhood, and their bodies are changing, they're going through puberty, personally, I do think they are a little young to be having these sexual experiences. I understand that, entering womanhood, your emerging femininity and sexuality, but Frankie is 12. That's really young to be emerging sexuality and having sex, I think anyway. Um, so I do think that that is important. And then it says, as a result, the girls identify and are identified with sideshow freaks. I just think that that's such a bad way to put it. That makes it sound like they're part of a circus. Sideshow freaks? They're just young girls. Like, who cares that they're not girly girls? Like, they're just young girls. I wouldn't go as far to call them sideshow freaks, personally. I would just not say that. What might the implications of this association of adolescence? What might be the implications of this association of adolescence with freakdom? We're gonna find out. So I really like this paragraph right here, starting with ideal femininity. This whole thing, kind of, I can highlight it. I can't get that last part. This isn't gonna work. Okay, it's not working, but you guys, you see what I'm pointing at. So right above that, it says, the heart is a lonely hunter and the member of the wedding. In the heart is a lonely hunter and the member of the wedding. It is the tension between Mick's and Frankie's tomboyishness and the ideal of the Southern belle or lady that most obviously makes manifest this interconnected dichotomy. And then the next paragraph says, ideal femininity is a particularly powerful image in McCullers' novels, since the image of the lady was all pervasive in the South. Even in the New South, the time in which McCullers was writing and her novels are set, the ideal of the worship lady prevailed. Although such an ideal became more and more transparent with the changing status of women in the 1940s and 1950s. However, as Westling notes, although the mask of the belle and the lady began to peel away, there was no alternative model of female identity. I think that last sentence is worded perfectly. This idea, like I said before, of the Southern belle, of being a lady, that's how it was in the South during the time that the books are set, and I think McCullers captures it so well because she lived through it. That they're, like I said, Mick and Frankie, they represent her life. And I think the reason that it's done so well is because it's basically her. It's like she's writing about herself, all these things, the time period that she lived through. And even though by the 40s and the 50s that started to change, and maybe the idea of this perfect Southern belle kind of started to wither away, like it says, there was no alternative model of female identity. So even if it was no longer that, there was nothing else. So in a way, it still was that. If there's nothing new, people are still gonna go off that idea that you should be like a lady and you should be perfect and like a Southern belle. And then it says, the Southern lady, the imminent destiny of both Mick and Frankie, is well captured in the member of the wedding, in the description of the club members, which is what I talked about in the last video, whom Frankie watches from the kitchen window, passing slowly before the arbor. The long gold sun slanted down on them and made their skin look golden also, and they were dressed in clean, fresh dresses. It is this image of femininity, a type of arrested subjectivity to which Frankie must aspire. But because she is a tomboy and so resists conforming to the vision, Frankie is unable to join the neighborhood girls' club. Not in my video yesterday. I talked about that in the last video. Like I said, Frankie, she doesn't really get along with these girls from the town, the neighborhood teenage girls. They're a little bit older than her, but I don't think that's the the one reason, the only reason why she doesn't get along with them very well. As it says, these girls, you know, their skin looks golden and they're dressed in clean, fresh dresses. You know, you get the impression that these girls are pretty. Maybe they do wear makeup. Maybe they have long, pretty hair, you know, like a very stereotypical, for lack of a better word, like Southern belle during this time period. And Frankie is almost the complete opposite of that. Yes, she's a girl, but she has very, very short hair. Boy short, kind of, not even like a little bob. She has very short hair. She is a tomboy. She doesn't dress very feminine. And that is, you know, where her and these girls, they kind of have that weird divide. And I think that's why she gets so angry at them for no reason in the movie. All they do is walk by her house and she's like, who do you think you are? You know, walking on my yard, get out, you know, and maybe because they don't accept her. Or like I said, maybe she is a little bit jealous of these girls. I don't know. I don't think she's jealous that she's not like them, because she doesn't care. She doesn't have to be like them, you know. She is her own tomboy, and that's fine. She likes it, obviously, but I do think part of her kind of, not that she wishes that she looked and dressed like them, but she wishes that she could be a part of a club like them. Like in the passage that I read in the first video, you know, she was kind of like, everyone has their club, everyone has their we, and I have no one, and she's very lonely, and I think she sees what these girls have, and she wishes that she had something like it, even though, you know, she doesn't have golden skin and clean, fresh dresses. It's kind of, I just think the idea of the entire thing. This next paragraph, I thought this was interestingly worded. If you guys want to comment on it in your discussion posts, I would be happy to read about that. Obviously, you don't have to. But right in this paragraph where it says, it seems that both Mick and Frankie failed to fulfill the requirements of womanhood membership due to their male identification, clearly at odds with images of proper femininity. I can't say that word. Both girls have boy nicknames. Ideally, naming should establish appropriate gender. To assume a male name confounds and plays with such dynamics of identification. Furthermore, both girls look and behave like males. They have short cropped hair, like I said, dress in shorts and sneakers, and yearn to join the armed forces. The stature of the two tomboys further underscores their defiance and of the ideal image of the good little woman. I personally, I don't know if maybe I'm reading too much into this, maybe I'm right, maybe I'm completely wrong, but I thought it was interesting the way she says their male identification. I I wouldn't go as far to say that they have male identification. I do think they are obviously not the most feminine girls. You know, like she says, they have short hair, they dress in shorts, they dress in sneakers. They do have the names, which is something else that I wanted to go over. Mick and Frankie, you know, and then that's like when Frankie has her whole, I want to be called F. Jasmine, I want to be called Francis. But their nicknames are traditional boy names. But I just personally, I don't know, when I read male identification, I was like, would you go as far to say male identification? Maybe you would. Maybe, you know, everything I just said, is that male identification? I mean, they don't identify as males. I guess that's what I'm trying to get at. You know, it's not like they are transgender or they want to identify as males. I do think that they are girls. I think they don't have a problem with that. I just think when I read male identification, I was kind of like, oh, that's interesting. I don't think in class we ever kind of, you know, obviously they are tomboyish, but I don't know if I would go as far to say male identification. I guess that's what I'm trying to get at. I don't know if you guys would agree with that, or maybe I'm wrong. But just kind of reading that, I was like, oh, male identification. I do think the names is interesting though. Frankie and Mick. I don't know, male identification. Yeah, I would like to know what you guys think about that. This video is about to end, but I am gonna make one more. I know it's kind of a lot, but like I said, I'm running out of time. I'm using Screencast-O-Matic. I didn't know how else to do it. The next video is gonna be my final video, and I'm just gonna go more into this. But this is